What we're focusing on today is what we call the Portsmouth submarket, because obviously this is Seacoast Board of Realty, so we can do the same thing for Manchester, Salem, Concord, et cetera, et cetera. The office market, and the other thing I want to say is that we all have different guidelines for these statistics. So you may, read the C.B. Richard Ellis report and say, well, gee, you're saying it's X percent, and they're saying it's Y percent. It's how we interpret it. So we want to establish the ground rules that we were given by corporate as to how we track buildings, because in the Seacoast in particular, there are a lot of buildings that are under 10,000 square feet that we don't track. But for office inventory, it's multi-tenant and single-tenant buildings, 10,000 square feet and above, classes A, B, and C. It does not include, and I didn't make up these rules, we just have to follow them, does not include medical space, owner-occupied space, office condos, and buildings under 10,000. So there's a lot of buildings we're not tracking. So we're giving you a snapshot of the larger properties that are multi-tenant and not owner-occupied. Okay. What towns does this include? Those towns are up there. It's pretty much a comprehensive list of the Seacoast, although one of the towns that should be there that we have to move from the Rochester submarket, I discovered in doing this, is Newmarket. We somehow Newmarket got into the Rochester submarket. The Portsmouth office inventory, and again, these numbers are, again, you have to remember the guidelines. About 2.3 million total square feet, and right now there's about 432,000 square feet vacant. The overall vacancy is 18%. Now, before, it's kind of a very interesting conundrum we have in our business, because people drive around and also have lots of office space, and I can, have lots of choices, but if you do a search for someone, it's never what they're looking for. You might have 2 or 3 things to show them. It's the wrong location, it's not big enough, it doesn't have enough parking, et cetera, et cetera. So that 18%, now that 18% is really skewed by some large vacancies in the market. And I can get into those specifics afterwards if anybody's interested. What's interesting about this graph, it kind of shows what's happened to that office inventory vacancy rate over the last year, Q4 of 09 through Q4 of 10. You can see there's a spike in midway through last year, roughly. It's starting to come down because it will start to come down, I think, this year, because there's not really much new construction going on. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Current office lease rates, and as best we can track them. Full service gross basically means everything's included. It's the way that Government wants to track it. Class A, about 1833 a square foot, and Class B, 1588. Now what's interesting, these statistics, by the way, are current, and I say that because our Q1 report won't be done for another month, but this is pretty much through the end of February. What's interesting about this is they really haven't changed in the last quarter, the rates. They were about the same last quarter. This chart also shows you the comparison for 2 different classes of rates. And we have this available in PowerPoint if anybody wants it. Offered market trends. And this is really the kind of the fun stuff. Okay, that's great. The statistics are great. 18%, 15%. Choose the number. It is where it is. But we think a few things here. Office leases will continue to outpace sales and numbers, but the dichotomy is everybody wants to buy. So that's why a lot of that office space is remaining unfilled, because people will say, that's great, but I can buy, I can get a mortgage on the property, and I can pay less per square foot than if I lease that same space, so therefore I'll do nothing and wait for something to come up. But if you're a buyer, there isn't a lot of supply. So, and there isn't a lot of supply because there's not a lot of new construction, which means people aren't moving around. Landlords are still pretty much giving away the store to get tenants if they know what they're doing, and Tom's a landlord, and I'm sure he doesn't do anything like this, but in all seriousness, basically I tell people, we're asking X, you just tell me what you want to pay, we'll talk to the landlord. You want free rent, you want tenant fit up, it really depends on how long you want to be there. I mean, if a space has been empty, every month it's costing the landlord money to pay the taxes, insurance, maintain the property, so something's better than nothing. And then those deals are getting done, which becomes, it's problematic in a sense that Tom ends up doing a deal and gives the guy 6 months free rent to get him in there. The next guy that comes along and says, geez, John Rice's company got 6 months, I want 8 months. And so it becomes a perpetuating thing. Larger square foot requirements, we're starting to see those in the market, and I'll talk about that a little bit with the industrial, kind of interesting. There's some larger companies. Now, what does that mean in Seacoast? It's different in Manchester. Tom and I were talking about this. For a Seacoast area, greater ports of 3 to 5,000 to 10,000 is considered a good size requirement. Let's say 5,000 and above. You know, we do a lot of 1,500, and I've done them with a lot of people in this room, 1,500, 2,000 square foot deals. But we're starting to see some larger requirements. They typically have been focused on Ps. Ps continues to be the economic engine. I saw C.B. Richard Ellis' report for Ps, and they're putting the vacancy rate at like 12 to 13%. I would dispute that. I think it's more like 8% vacancy of Ps as compared to 18. So you can see, no, but that's an historic high for Ps. They've never had vacancy in the past.